Morning. My name is Mohammed Ibrahim. I'm the Director for Technical Cooperation at ICA, which is based in San Jose, Costa Rica, and works throughout Latin America and the Caribbean. Let me thank the organizers for inviting me to moderate this session this morning to look at the gene banks, innovations and collaboration in gene banks in the global community. Globally, as you probably know, the food system is using a very narrow base of crops for food, despite the fact that we have numerous varieties that are available with good potential for improving the food security and nutrition. But at the same time, the importance of these gene banks in terms of looking for the traits for looking at improving nutrition, the food security, but also adaptation to climate change, better water use, resistance to pests and diseases. And therefore, the importance of these gene banks are very important in the systemic integration in this food system. Today's event builds on the official launch of the new Genebanks Accelerator on Tuesday, and it's a chance to get some practical details about how to unlock the full potential of the gene banks. We will focus first on the ways to enhance collaboration, both within the gene banks committee and between the gene banks and their users. This is very important so that we can have more impacts, but also feedbacks of how these gene banks are functioning. In the second section, we will look at some of the specific innovations being used in gene banks, both to enhance conservation, for example, cryopreservation, and to make the resources more relevant to users, for example, screening using artificial intelligence. And this reason, we need to look at the capacity that the countries have for using these innovations. But before we start, we would like to know a bit more about you as an audience. And please use your phones to scan the QR code on the screen or type the numerical code in the menti.com to answer some questions about you and the CGIAR gene banks. We will guide you through this process. Let's start, and you can look at the instructions, and please, we can look at the questions and you can answer that. So the first question is, have you worked with CGIAR gene banks in the past? We can see many of you have been frequently cooperating with the gene banks and worked. Some have started. So that's it. Can we move to the second question? Please add to the pin or the gene bank you have worked with based on the geographical location where you're working on, and so we know exactly which of the gene banks we've been using more. You can see on the SIP, it's coming up, the alliance.
This one in the middle of the ocean.
Yeah. Hillary, Ikrisat. Seems to IRI, that's the rice research. So we can see there's a distribution of using the gene banks based on your locations we are working on. So can we move to the next question? Please rank the following terms of how important they are to you as a potential gene bank user. I don't see any question. Access to the germplasm, very large collection, characterization, capacity, phytosanitary health, guidance, and policy. Data collection, access to germplasm, capacity. So you can see there's a lot of interest in terms of the use of the gene bank in terms of the different use and multiple functions. So we can move to the next question. How would you prefer to get updates about the Genebanks Accelerator's work? These are the LinkedIn, CGIAR website, CGIAR newsletter, in-person events, and all the social media. LinkedIn, in-person events. So you can see there are different sources how you access the information of the gene banks. You have another question? No. The next question. Any suggestions on the impact examples? Please include your name, title, and email if you would like us to follow up. As we said, the objective here is to create how do we have a community of communication and working with you together. Okay, so we will start now into the program, and we have a program which we look at how do we look at the building a stronger gene bank networks, the community of practices. Then we're following by another presentation, enhancing gene bank, breeding linkages, and user engagement throughout the global system. Following that, we'll have a discussion around these two presentations. And then we go for a second phase in terms of how do we look at the strengthening gene banks through cryopreservation and advanced conservation methods, and unlocking the diversity of gene bank collections through digital tools and artificial intelligence. And this will follow the discussion. So I will introduce the first speaker who's going to talk, Dr. Mari Noili Dijonjob. Sorry if I present your name. And she's going to present also with Dr. Lava Kumar of ITA on building stronger gene bank networks, the communities of practices, and global collaboration. You have 15 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Marine Wenjonjo. I'm leading the Gene Bank at Africa Rice Center based in Cote d'Ivoire. So today, we want really to welcome you at this Gene Bank site event on building Gene Bank network, community of practice, and global collaboration. This is a very important topic as we work as a community, as a network across the gene bank, across in the world. But before I share the detail of this presentation with you, I would like really to, first of all, show how we establish the global collaboration system for genetic resources through the partnership. So what do we want to achieve when we build this global partnership? We really want okay. We want to increase the gene plasmid diversity conserved in the gene bank, ensure that they are available to global users, free from quarantine pests and diseases as per the international treaty. We really want to see the integration between in situ and ex situ conservation effort from local to international level. We also want, we are also, by doing this, we are also responding to the call from the CBD and also from United Nations initiative addressing the biodiversity loss and preserving genetic diversity through well-managed gene banks. So how is the CGIAR coming together to really respond to this very important issue? The CGIAR gene banks align their support to partner based on need, identify, and through the report, through the NAS report to the treaty, to the FAO report, through the crop trust need, to the plant breeding for tomorrow need, through the need from our partner. We align our support to the identified need from the partner. And also, we want to strengthen this global collaboration through community of practice and also thematic regional working group that we were able to establish. And so if I want to show you on this slide, we were able to establish some area of where we have community of practice. We have community of practice on cryopreservation, for instance, community of practice on seed quality management, community of practice on data management. You heard the other day that the seed, the accession without data are meaningless. So we have the community of practice on germplasm health. We have the community of practice on policy and all the legal aspects around the genetic resources. We also have the community of practice on digital sequence information. So with all these community of practice are working together at the CGIAR and NAS level, and we also have some thematic groups also, where we also have some online training, and all these community of practice and online training help us to enrich the data access and design build a very solid data system where the user can have access, use the tools that we develop to select specific accession from the global platform, and also based on the target product profile per market segment. So the breeder will understand what I'm saying here. Okay, so because we really want to reach all our users, so we establish all this community of practice and also working group to really respond to those needs. So I just want here now to highlight some few community of practice that we were able to establish. The first one is the seed quality management community of practice. This is an important community of practice. It was developed, it was established several years ago. And it became clear to us that we need a collaboration, and also we need for the staff working in the gene bank to learn about the latest development in the seed conservation science. So this is why we established this seed quality management community of practice. What is the mission? The mission of this seed quality management community of practice is really to have an efficient and also an effective group of people working on seed conservation. How do we do that? We do it through capacity building workshop, online training to help gene bank staff understand the science on the timing routine operation. We also do it through the research related to viability monitoring, harvest processing, regeneration practices. We predict the viability, seed viability, and also longevity. And we use all this information from this seed management, quality management community of practice to improve our standard operating procedure and also future-proof gene bank activities. We come together, work together to ensure the synergy and also harmonize approaches to disseminate knowledge on seed banking and also to enhance the global system for conservation of plant genetic resources. So the second one will be on the genetic, my goodness, it's not moving. No, back, please. Digital sequence information. Why will you create this community of practice to address one of the resolution from the plant treaty? Because asking to the CGIAR to really help to share the capacity in managing and also using the digital sequence information. So we initiate this this committee of practice in Latin America in 2022. The goal is to coordinate among the CG and the NAS across the region, all the genetic resources characterization that they have. They identify the crop they are working on. They also come together to identify a common platform. They pull the data analysis, they come together. You can see on this picture how they come together to analyze the result. They co-publish those results. And so we want to now extend this work in other regions of the world. Now, the last but not the least, community of practice is on data management. This is very important for the gene bank. Without data, the seed are meaningless. So we establish a very robust data system. Okay, data system called Green Global. And it was developed by USDA in the US. And after adopted by the Crop Diversity Trust, we work in that system. Now it's called Green Global Community Edition. And it's a very solid data system where we come across the CGIAR and the NAS to harmonize the way we are working, to look at the world, to create the glossary of all the terms that we are using in the gene bank, to have to standardize the way we are working, to ensure that the goal is to serve our user, to ensure that they will have one robust system when they can request for the germplasm. Over to you.
Thank you, Mariana. So I will finish off this presentation. If you remember the Mentimeter, anybody recollect the first choice of the gene bank users? Anybody? Any guesses? Access to germplasm. If you want to have an access to germplasm, one of the key requirements is that germplasm should be healthy and it should meet the requirements of the national plant production regulatory rules and procedures. In order to do that, we have to make sure that germplasm is free from quarantine pests and diseases. We have established germplasm health management community of practice, which basically addresses the important policy requirements concerning with the phytosanitary issues as per the framework of the International Plant Production Convention of FAO. And this community of practice also addresses some of the important targets of CBD, such as target 6, which is concerning with preventing the spread of invasive pests through the transboundary trade and movement of planting material or seed. So the germplasm health management COP focuses on enhancing the phytosanitary management tools, and it harmonizes the practices across CGIAR as well as among the partners, strengthen the phytosanitary capacity, both within CGIAR as well as among the partners, including in gene banks and the plant quarantine organizations, which plays as a nodal agency for germplasm exchange, and ultimately support food security and biodiversity, because pest and disease is also one of the major contributors for germplasm loss, both in C2 as well as XC2 and other places. So the other aspect is the policy GR. The genetic resources policy is also very important. The policy community of practice has helped in the past from 2022 to 2025 with the financial and technical support to 6 countries for the national implementation of the International Plant Treaty and the adoption of standard operating procedures in relevant organizations. This COP is also focusing on supporting countries involved in other community of practices under the Genebanks Accelerator, and present experiences at the 11th session of the international treaty that is going to happen in November this year. So all of this have very strong NORDS engagement. All these communities work hand in hand with a number of NORDS who also follow similar approaches. For instance, online meetings and training courses are held to disseminate the best practices, innovations, and tools that are available that have been established as part of the COPs. And these COPs have been playing a major role in enhancing the operational efficiency and capacity to meet international standards of the national gene banks. And the data management, as Marie-Noëlle mentioned, is one of the key requirement. There is a lot of effort in terms of harmonizing and streamlining the data management in the national gene banks. So what are the way forward plans? To continue to focus on strengthen the regional hubs for cryo preservation. Maybe you can use the key. Yeah. And then community of practice for molecular characterization, seed quality management, and germplasm health, especially focusing on hands-on training. Organize webinars on genomics, especially emphasizing the digital sequence information and cryopreservation techniques. And then organize online courses covering policy, seed quality management, germplasm health, and data management. This is in collaboration with Open University, where participants can take this course online and then they would get the qualification certificate. And then supporting NARDs and postgraduate students for advanced degree training. And then collaborate on funding proposals, especially in helping NARDS partners get aid through the benefit sharing fund of the plant treaty. So the key conclusions from this work are, from our experience, we found that COPs are dynamic networks that help promote knowledge sharing, innovation development, and collaboration. This approach has greatly enhanced coordination and operational effectiveness among the gene banks. It allows gene banks, and there's a synchronization issue here. Anyway, it allows gene banks and the partners to synchronize standards, share tools and data, and strengthen the global framework for conserving and biodiversity essential for food systems. And then the COP achievements highlights the importance of knowledge sharing and capacity building and advancing the goals of gene banks around the world. There was a recent assessment by the CGIAR Independent Advisor and Evaluation Service review of the gene bank platform that commended COPs for their beneficial influence on the global gene bank networks. So with that, thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie-Noëlle and Dr. Kumar, for making your presentations in which you highlight the importance of in situ and ex situ conservation, but also the importance of seed quality. I think this makes a difference in terms of how farmers use good quality seeds and having improving in productivity and also adaptation to the problems of climate change, etc. And also underscoring the importance of the phytosanitary management tools and what are the processes and plan that we need to move forward in these objectives. So I will invite the other speakers to talk about enhancing gene bank, breeding linkages on user engagement through the global system. Dr. Claudia Chiarola, Alliance for Biodiversity SIAT, and Ninja Lacy.
Hello. Yeah, there we go. All right. Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Ninja Lacy. I work for CGIAR. If we go to the next slide, clicker. Yes. CGIAR is a public-private partnership in the Netherlands. We consist of the Dutch Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Dutch Potato Organization, and the Dutch Seed Association. And we work to leverage Dutch knowledge and know-how for integrated seed sector development in low and middle income countries. And the end goal, of course, is for all farmers to have access to quality seeds of varieties of their choice. And we see that as an integral part of SDG 2. But why am I here? In recent years, I think over the last 2 years, we've been hearing a lot of concerns from our network and our CGIAR family on the rapidly disappearing genetic diversity from farmers' fields. And given the global challenges we are now facing, such as climate change, such as population growth, this is pretty bad news. So this, going back to my slides here. Yeah, so we have these global challenges and we have this disappearing genetic diversity. But at the same time, we have dwindling collaboration on the conservation and use of this genetic diversity. This especially goes for public-private collaboration around this conservation of genetic diversity. Now I'll go into a little bit of the background of this. The background of this is since the CBD, since that came into effect, the exchange of, the plant genetic resources were recognized to be under the sovereign right of states rather than public goods as that was before. And this was rightfully so. But how to arrange then the exchange of these genetic resources between countries, but also between companies and countries. Thankfully, we have the International Treaty for Plant Genetic Resources and for Food and Agriculture by the FAO, who aim to standardize the exchange of these resources through the multilateral system. And this goes for countries that have ratified the treaty and the crops that are specified in the Annex 1 of this treaty. All other crops and countries who have not ratified the international treaty automatically fall under the Nagoya Protocol, and this requires bilateral negotiations to negotiate on the exchange of these materials. So that's the background. And following this, so we have the global challenges we're facing. We have the dwindling genetic resources, but also the lack of collaboration. CDNL decided to develop 7 guiding principles for more intense public-private collaboration to conserve and use plant genetic resources. We interviewed national gene bank managers, CGIAR managers, people from the private sector, public sector, and came up with these 7 principles. I won't go into all of them, but I'd like to highlight 3 of them that relate more to the regulatory environment that we're speaking to. So firstly, trust. I know it's a cliche and you've heard it probably 1,000 times in this week, but it is so important to actually hear and listen to the perspectives from all the stakeholders around the table. This goes for the perspectives of countries rich in agricultural resources and countries rich in breeding history, but also this perspective of private breeders, seed companies, that they may also be part of the solution and are not just profit above everything. The private sector that we spoke to during the development of these principles do feel a social responsibility, as well as the fact that they need genetic diversity for their breeding programs. The other principle I want to highlight is the enabling environment. We have the international treaty, which is wonderful, but of course, improvements can be made. So we made 3 recommendations. We would love for all countries basically to join the treaty, for the crops under the treaty to be expanded, and we would love for some capacity building support for countries to be able to implement the treaty in the national legislation. The last principle I want to highlight here is the access and benefit sharing. So the biggest barrier to collaboration that had been mentioned was access and benefit sharing and the ineffectiveness that is experienced. So there's a lot of paperwork that goes into it, legal unclarity, and unclarity on the rate of payments that's expected. The discussion on what access and benefit sharing should look like, what does fair access and benefit sharing mean, is an ongoing discussion. And I think that Claudio, our next speaker, has some updates for that. Claudio is the legal officer of the CGIAR Genebanks policy team, and he attended the ad hoc working group meeting on enhancing the MLS in Rome, and we'll be giving some updates on the issues I've just mentioned. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Nina, and Thanks for accepting to do the heavy lifting on the background. Okay, so in this second part of the present, I don't like this microphone. Maybe I can use that one.
You think so?
No?
You need to sit here.
Yeah, that's all right.
Okay.
Is it better? Yeah. Okay. This is off. So good morning to everyone. It's a pleasure being here, and thanks for the opportunity to provide you with an update about the work that we do at the international level, coordinating and representing the 11 CGIAR centers that have signed agreements with the governing body with respect to the important policy developments that concern the enhancement of the multilateral system on access and benefit sharing that stems from the plan treaty that Nina has just talked about. So I will address two primary questions in this brief presentation. The first one is, how well are we doing in terms of enhancing the linkages precisely between the gene banks and the breeders? And the second question is, what can we expect as an outcome from the multilateral system enhancement process, and how is that going to impact on these linkages and on the mode in which we operate as either breeders or gene banks? So I would like to start by saying that the multilateral system already works well. It's functioning from the point of view of facilitating access to PGRFA. There's 1.4 million of accessions that are included already in the multilateral system. And these are shared very widely through the standard material transfer agreement, which is the agreement that enshrines the terms and conditions of the treaty that relates to how to share these materials and how to share the benefits therefrom. So where the treaty has failed to deliver to some extent is the issue of user-based payments into the benefit sharing fund. Because the way the treaty has been set up is that if you are a recipient of materials from the multilateral system and you bring to the market a product that incorporates that material, and that product is available with is not available without restriction on research and breeding, then you would have to pay a certain percentage, that is 1.1%, into the benefit sharing fund. So there's a very specific contribution that needs to be made. And there have been very, very few negligible contributions under these mandatory benefit sharing requirements. There has been money into the benefit sharing fund, 22 million disbursed so far under 4 project cycle, but that comes from voluntary contributions from government with a few companies chipping in as well. So this is the main reason why the enhancement of the multilateral, or the functioning of the multilateral system, this process was launched in 2013. So we have already 13 years plus of negotiations under the belt. And this process is set out to be concluded November this year, when the governing body will meet in Lima, Peru. And the picture that I showed you at the beginning was a meeting that of the working group that is, undertaking these deliberations, which met in Rome last week. So I was there with our whole team, providing inputs into that process. Now, how well are we doing? Well, first of all, in terms of distribution, as you can see from this slide, our own breeding programs account for close to 70% of the recipients of materials from our own gene banks. So we are the largest users. So the connection seems pretty solid there, right, as an accelerator. However, if we look at the private sea companies, I think there's a lot of work that we can still do. And these shows, all the external recipient, excluding therefore our breeding programs, okay? So, and the private seed companies over a period from 2019 to 2023 account approximately on average 9% in terms of overall volume of materials received. So there's clearly a reluctance from the private sector to actually sign the terms that are in the SMTA. And I can simplify here, there's two main things I think that put them off to a certain level, and that's that for now, the obligations have no time limitation. So once you engage, it's potentially forever. You would have to make sure that you are compliant with the terms and conditions and with the benefit sharing provisions. And the second aspect is that there's no threshold of minimal incorporation into your product for triggering the benefit sharing. So you would have down the line to really monitor the pedigree of anything that you bring into the market to make sure that if something is included in those products and the other requirements are met, then you can report back to the governing body and pay. So this indefinite obligation, of course, has a certain cost in terms of due diligence, and that's kind of problematic for companies. This is what we heard from our colleagues at ISF and so on. And these issues are being addressed in the package of measures that are currently being negotiated. So the package of measures to enhance the multilateral system is comprised by three main elements: a revision to Annex 1 of the treaty, potentially expanding the scope of the multilateral system to all PGRFA that are in ex situ collections, including infill collection. And this is coupled with a set of safeguards. That is to say that contracting parties, when ratifying the amendments, they can put forward a list of crops that they wish to exclude. This is a one-time exemption, and then there's a modality so that they can include it later on, but they cannot add new crops later. So this is to build trust and confidence, because they want to see the money coming in before they put, all the most important crops for them into the system. The second aspect, of course, is tremendously important, relates to the revised standard material transfer agreement. There are many elements to it that are of importance to this discussion, but I'd just like to mention one, that is the payment structure. So there's some polarization of different group of countries, but simplifying the situation, developing countries would like to have a subscription system only. Subscription system only means that recipients that are subscribers would pay into the benefit sharing fund a very low percentage, but from the very outset, from the year in which they subscribe, on the sales of seed of any crops that they have in their portfolio. So without the requirement to incorporate physically materials that they have received into a product. And this would have the benefit of providing a predictable and reliable flow of resources into the benefit sharing fund of the treaty, that then supports capacity building at national level and enables implementation, technology transfer, and so on. So very, very critical and important for many countries. Then there's another group of countries and the International Seed Federation and private sector, which say that they still need to have a single access option, which is what we currently have under the SMTA. That is very important for them to have these as well as an option, to have this single access. And in that case, you would pay as a recipient only if you commercialize a product that incorporates the material from the multilateral system. And again, there would be different rates depending on whether the product is available or not for thorough research and breeding, with products not available with a higher rate, and then a lower rate for those that are available for thorough research and breeding. For example, if are protected through plant variety protection, because obviously you have the plant breeders exemption. But this becomes mandatory, even if which is different from what we have now, right? Because now products that are available, they don't pay. So this in extreme summary. Then, of course, there's a whole discussion around the SI. Maybe in the Q&A, if you're interested, I can elaborate more on that. But just to say that we have been very actively and positively interacting with not only with contracting parties and regions and the coaches who have invited us repeatedly to provide research-based inputs into the process to inform the deliberations, but also with the International Seed Federation, for example, that has actively collaborated on the study that you see here on digital sequence information that was presented at the last meeting of the governing body. And they also helped us to review the patent landscape report, which I authored with other colleagues, internal and external, on the patent landscape on PGRFA-related invention, which, as I mentioned, is important to have transparency in that regard, because that will is linked to the rate of payments depending on products. So these have been presented at the working group, and there's more work going on this front. So with that, I thank you very much for your kind attention. And also there's a number of materials that can support you in your work. If you're a breeder or otherwise engaged in these processes, feel free to reach out to us through the policy help desk, or directly. We'll be happy to provide you with the support that you need. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Neja and Claudio, for your presentation. Neja made a comment about erosion of the genetic diversity. And I think that's very important when you look at resilience of the food systems, to have more diversity. But also highlighted the importance of looking at the barriers on simplification of the processes for the exchange of genetic material. On the other hand, Claudio mentioned the objectives of multilateral system and how you use the benefit sharing mechanism. What are the challenges to work with the private sector in terms of how you look at obligations and due diligence? And these are some of the issues that highlight from the presentations. So the next session, we're going to have discussions. We have a 10 minutes to have discussions and comments, if you would like to start with your questions. Who has a comment or question to the speakers?
Yeah, thanks. I'm just wondering, what's the current state of discussions in regard to DSI? What is going to be within the scope of DSI? The definition of DSI, no, seems to be constantly expanding from DNA sequences all the way to traditional knowledge potentially. So what's the current state of affairs in that area?
Thank you, Peter. Very good question. I mean, the direct question is easy to answer. The parties have so far decided not to define DSI. So even in the Convention on Biological Diversity, they adopted at COP15 and then at COP16 the modalities for operationalization of another multilateral mechanism for the sharing of benefits arising from DSI, and they have not defined the term. So because the way in which they set up the mechanism, it was not necessary, because they don't want to have tracking and tracing. Obviously, it's impossible to do tracking and tracing all specific bits and pieces of DSI into a product. So that's not the approach that we want to have. So we don't need to define it. They define sectors. There's the plant and animal breeding sectors. If you meet certain thresholds, you're expected to pay an indicative rate that is 0.1 of sales of the products that you bring on the market, if you are, from those sectors that are heavily dependent on the use of DSI. These under the Convention on Biological Diversity. I think the same kind of approach is taken under the treaty, so that's not defined, but there's a whole discussion. The co-chair's proposal is currently to address the question of benefit sharing for DSI in the draft resolution, not in the standard material transfer agreement, which is provides binding obligations. So the idea here is that if you are a subscriber, because you pay upfront a 0.0 whatever %, there's no agreement on the rates yet, but on any crop that you bring to the market, that payment would cater also for your payment for any use of DSI on PGRFA that you have made. So that is sorted. But if you go for the dual system, that is, you have a single access option and then you have a subscription option, if the recipient decide to go for the single access, then that is physical incorporation into a specific product, and that payment would not cater for DSI. So how do you deal with that? So one possibility is to say, we just let it go. And if they want to, they make the payment under the multilateral mechanism under CBD, or perhaps voluntarily under the Plant Treaty Benefit Sharing Fund. But this is an issue that has not been resolved yet.
Thank you. Do you have another question over there?
Yeah, hi, I'm from C4E Craft. I really enjoyed your presentation, found it very clear. I've been out of circle from the gene banks for a year or so, but I'm really excited to see that the Annex 1 is going to be expanded. I mean, being C4ECRAF being an Article 15 center, so does that mean we could take all our genetic resources into the Annex 1? How's this going to work?
Thank you so much. And it's a great question. I wanted to mention it, but because of time, I didn't. And so the real issue there, we as CG centers, and we already, I think also C4, under the guidance of the governing body, we already provide non-Annex 1 material under the SMTA. And the number of gene banks like CGN in the Netherlands, they also do. And actually, those two payments are for vegetable crops of non-Annex 1 that have been shared through the SMTA. So there's no Annex 1 that trigger any payment ever, right? So we already do that, and we have the backing of the governing body to do so. Now, regarding the expansion of the crops in the multilateral system for parties, for the national gene banks and so on, that's much more problematic because the system, how it is now, if you want to have this amendment, that is by default, you will have all PGRFA inside if they are in ex situ conditions, okay? So not those that are in farmers' fields, but everything else in principle should be in. So what is the problem? The problem is that to have an amendment to the plant treaty, you need more than 100 ratification. 100 ratification. And if the ratifications, if the amendment does not come into force, now I think in the text is 5 years, 5 years, which is a very short time for having 100 ratification, everything reverts back to square one. So the new SMTA will be gone and you go back to the current SMTA. So all the work done in 15 years, wiped out. So what is the issue here? That the countries, before saying, okay, we are ready to put all our stuff into the multilateral system and not to go for a bilateral licensing or negotiation on things that are of importance to us, they want to see the money. They want to see the cash flow. And where is that cash flow going to come from if you still have, you know, this large flexibility to go for the single access option where you can, I mean, again, there's an improvement because all products in principle, even if they are not, you're not subject to restriction, they would yield some benefits back into the fund. But the real issue there is that to see if this works or not, we had have to wait 5 to 10 years because that's the time to develop a new variety that will incorporate these materials to the market. So there's a bit of a lack of synchrony between the fact that we need to have the amendments coming into force to reap the benefits of the new system, not to revert back. But it will take time to have money into the fund for now. Thank you for the question again.
Thank you. We have, I'll take 2 questions more. One,
Okay.
Can you say which of the speakers are you addressing your question when you ask?
Okay, to Claude. Thank you very much. My name is Adegboyega from Society for Underutilized Legumes. I just want to have an understanding of where community-based seed banks and the national seed banks have a role to play in the policy that have been developed, because I discovered that the documents shared were only specific for CGIAR scientists. Do you have a synergy with community-based and national gene banks? Thank you.
Mari, do you want to answer that question or policy?
Try to be very brief. Thank you so much. Community seed banks are extremely important. I think the treaty addresses community seed bank as well as national seed banks. So in principle, if your country is a contracting party to the treaty, for sure you can share the annex. You should be able to share the Annex 1 materials with the standard material transfer agreement. Perhaps the best way to do that would be to make a deposit into your national gene bank from the community seed bank, if there's agreement to do so, and they should, in principle, make those materials available through the SMTA already. So that's the easy way to include them and to get them into GLEAS, to make it visible and so on. So yeah, it does apply. It does apply, but most often because there's this also kind of friction with the Convention on Biological Diversity, and at the national level there needs to be an articulation, so you would have to follow the national laws, and in some countries you would have, you know, even before using the SMTA, you would have in some cases to get clearance from appropriate government departments, being them environment, agriculture, or joint committee. So it really depends how the system is set up at the national level before you take the risk to using a particular legal instrument, and then, you know, it can be risky if something goes wrong.
Thank you. So
Yes, thank you, Claudio. That was a very insightful presentation. I highly appreciate it. My name is Stef de Haan from the International Potato Center. I was wondering if there has been any discussions about, apart from the subscription and kind of the current mechanism of benefit sharing, if there have been any discussions about widening kind of the basket of options, because it's only 2 options, and I think there could be 4 or 5 or 6 different modalities to arrange for benefit sharing payments, no? And options to learn about agrobiodiversity or biodiversity credits, or voluntary or direct benefit sharing schemes, which I think are also highlighted in the note from CGIAR, one example from the Dutch Potato Center, which is a direct payment to custodian farmers, which is another barrier also with the treaty, because a lot of the money from the benefit sharing funds ends up in national research programs and in NGOs, but it doesn't arrive in the hands of indigenous federations or of custodian farmer organizations, no? So there seems to be a gap there as well. But do you see any options to widen kind of the portfolio of benefit sharing mechanisms?
Sure, thank you, Steph. That's also a great question. The answer is, in the SMTA, in the current kind of agreement, no. They are not looking at those particular mechanisms that you mentioned. That doesn't mean that they are not applicable, you know, in particular cases. I mean, everything should be explored at this point. The only additional thing that we are working closely with the International Seed Federation is to kind of think more about a subscription that is a crop base, so that the payments would not be limited, will not be for all the crops that you have in your portfolio, but only for the crops. Like if I'm commercializing corn, right, I will never be a subscriber, because that means the day after I have to pay on my corn sales, which I probably don't need to get corn because I'm already using my own collection with elite materials. But maybe if I have a vegetable arm as a company, I would be a subscriber for the veg. And so we are kind of thinking to bring back the crop-based payment, which is the current 6.11 of the SMTA, right, the voluntary one, which would allow then even large companies and big players maybe to become subscriber for specific crops, because otherwise we don't see where the incentive might come from. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Claudio, for your nice presentation. 2 quick ones. One, when you showed us that pie chart showing how the access to the gene bank material in the CG Center is moving. And when I looked at the 9% of the private sector, I asked myself a question. How does this relate to the entire breeding portfolio across the world, in terms of public sector breeding and private sector breeding, and also in terms of the entire seed requirement, global seed requirement, private versus non-private seed production at public institutions and also in the informal seed sector? Have we tried to interrogate that for us to appreciate whether actually private sector is not accessing these materials in a manner that would be expected, or it's because that's about it? Then the second one is about the last week's meeting, the enhancement meeting. I was wondering whether there was any convergence towards payment rates. Did you see any convergence towards payment rates? Because we just have a few months to have this done. Do you think we are getting there on the payment rates? Thank you.
Thanks a lot. These are also big questions. So for the first one, in terms of the 9%, so that only accounts for direct access to our own gene bank from CGIAR by private companies, okay? There's a certain amount of other things that happen in the fringe, which is not captured by those data because we don't necessarily transfer PGRFA or PGRFA under development. So if it is already a product that is ready for commercialization, then we would transfer it through a different licensing agreement, providing for the benefit sharing provision in that, but is not captured by the system in terms of the data that we see. So there could be more that you know our breeders finish already as almost as a product ready for commercialization that goes out to private or public sector and so on. So it's a partial figure, but it's just to give you an indication that again that we can do more. On the second point, the rates. So I think the effort at this last meeting last week was more to get the payment structure right. And as I said, there's still work to do. But there was agreement in terms of the sequencing that the highest rate should be for single access, so product-based payments for products that are not available for tartar research and breeding. And the reference point here is the current SMTA, that's 1.1%, less 30% to recover commercialization costs. So it boils down to a real 0.7 of sales. That's a reference point that is not agreed, but is what we have already. Then there would be a lower rate for single access, so product-based payments for products that are available without restrictions. So for example, varieties protected through plant variety protection or other products that are put there for direct use that are commercialized, these would yield these kind of payments with a higher rate. Then you would have subscribers that have products in their portfolio that are, again, protected through patents, for example, so those products will not be available. They would pay a lower rate, but then the highest rate would be for subscribers that make all products available without restrictions. So this is in terms of which would be a 0.0 something, right? So and there also is the incentive for somebody to become subscriber upfront or to use the single access is how much that difference is going to be. But again, they didn't the regions didn't put forward specific figures. They just agreed on kind of these order of magnitude in terms of payments. Thanks a lot.
Okay, let me thank you for the responses. Now we're going to continue the program. I'm sure we're going to get back to the other speakers and the discussions in the closing remarks. So the next session is going to focus more on methods. The first speaker is going to be, we're looking at strengthening gene banks through cryopreservation and advanced conservation methods. Dr. Rainer Vollmer from SIP and Dr. Alexander Schulinger from GIZ.
I'm not sure which microphone I should use. Well, maybe the sound is better probably with that one, isn't it? Okay. All right. Yeah, thank you for the invitation. My name is Alexander Schöning. I work for GIZ, which is a German agency for development cooperation, but we also fund international agricultural research centers and also the gene banks. I took this out of a report from FAO on the status of plant genetic resources. Many of you may know this. It's just to show that when we talk about gene banks, we are actually talking about a global system of gene banks. and that has also been mentioned before already. The CG Genebanks are part of that global system, and with their entrust collections, they have a special responsibility within the system, not only for maintaining those international collections, but also for capacity building, for introducing innovations into the system, and also for policy work. And I'm glad to see that within the CGIAR, the Genebanks are still a standalone program. And I think that, yeah, is a good sign to and reflects their significance and their special status also. The German funding to Genebanks has a long history. The funding is coming from our Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, the BMZ, and is channeled through GIZ, the company I'm working for, and through KfW, which is a German development bank. We are channeling the funds through the endowment fund of the Crop Trust and also through some projects of the Crop Trust on the one hand, and on the other hand also through the CGIAR. The endowment fund is doing a great job in funding the essential operations of Genebanks in the longer term. And beyond that, the Genebanks, of course, also need funding for non-essential operations, for increasing their efficiency, and for introducing also innovations into the system and for upgrading. We are doing that also partly via the Crop Trust and partly via CGIAR. Our most recent support for Genebanks is a project with SIP on cryopreservation. You probably all know that some crops cannot be kept in normal Genebanks because they don't reproduce through seeds. Many of them are kept in vitro, which is a good method, of course, which has been used for a long time, but it comes with certain risks because you can lose accessions. There's a possibility of contamination. It's costly and it's also sometimes difficult to implement. The alternative is cryopreservation, which is a relatively new method for plants and which we aim to scale with that project. And that's actually one of the innovations I mentioned earlier. The project that we're implementing with SIP is based on a concept from the Global Plant Cryopreservation Initiative that actually foresees 3 cryo hubs, one in Africa, one in Europe, and one at SIP in Peru for the Americas. And we're actually now starting to fund with that project the cryo hub in Peru. And I'm personally happy that this project materialized, and we expect that the hub will not only be implemented as a SIP project, but will serve the entire region. It shall, of course, conserve the entrust collections of potato, sweet potato, and other root and tuber crops in the Andean region, but it shall also maintain safety copies of cryo collections from the region. And it shall provide capacity building also for national Genebanks and for CGIAR. Our hope is that we can gain more efficiency by using that method because it's cost efficient, it doesn't need much space. The material, once it's cryopreserved, doesn't need much manipulation anymore. Of course, there's also a possibility to maintain some of the materials that are not used frequently, only in cryopreservation. And ideally, we would set up also the other hubs that are foreseen in the plan. So I hope that other funders will also be able to provide some funding for this initiative, because in my view, it's a really useful initiative, and not only for CGIAR, but also for the global system overall. Yeah, and with that, I'm looking forward to Rainer's presentation on the practical implementation of the project.
So my part will be a little bit more technical. I hope you will not get bored. So some of you will not know perhaps what is cryopreservation. Cryopreservation is the conservation of plant parts in liquid nitrogen at ultra low temperatures. For all this, four you can see, there's no good conservation method out there for ex situ conservation. You have at some point the plant dies and you have to propagate it again and again and again and again. 5 of the 10 most important crops are clonal crops. So there's a need really to go a step further and to use the most modern conservation methods for ex situ conservation. On the right hand, you can see a small photo how this works. It's in a droplet of cryoprotectant solutions. You have 10 shoot tips that's then immersed in liquid nitrogen. The question is, why cryopreservation? There are many reasons. Now, one is you don't have any time limitations. You do it only once, and then you only have to fill up the tank. It's a low risk of mix-ups, contaminations. Material stays pathogen-free and genetically stable. It's sustainable. The air contains 78% of nitrogen. You can produce your liquid nitrogen wherever you want. And then the cost thing. For cryopreservation, we have a one-off cost of about $400 to $500 one time. But then the cost is $7 to $10 per year. While in vitro, you have a cost of $100 year by year. Resilient. It's probably the most resilient method for ex situ conservation. And especially the second point is important. COVID. When there was the COVID disease worldwide, in our case, one person came in every 3 to 4 weeks for 3 hours and could conserve 4,000 accessions. So that's not possible with other conservation methods. No. The in vitro people were really struggling to maintain the collection alive. So if there's some crisis, cryo helps a lot. But it's also important to bring it back. Everything starts in the nature, starts on the field, and we conserve it, but we want also to bring it back to the field. So to bring a plant back to the field takes about 60 days to take it out of liquid nitrogen and regenerate a plant of this size that you can then bring to the field. So this is the situation currently of the CGIAR cryo collection. As a group, this is the head of the game. This is the largest collection for clonal crops in cryopreservation worldwide. CGIAR is starting now also. So they moved to a new building, so they also have a very nice installation and are starting. And yeah, also these are the numbers. Where started everything? This was a feasibility study that was done with the help of 3 governments, the German government, the Swiss government, and the Australian government, the Crop Trust, and some centers. And this happened in 2017, and there we have seen that really cryo is the way to go for many reasons. Then later, 2022, we had a cryo workshop of 14 countries, 13 of Latin America, 13 NAS, and also the participation of the Crop Trust and the Plant Treaty. 1 year later, we implemented our safety copy in Huancayo, in the highland. There we have a small cryobank there. And now we're also going for international safety copy in Europe. So we try to follow the rules. And this is the outcome, the most important outcome of the GIZ project Alexander has mentioned. It's a new cryobank that has space for our collection and 70,000 accessions, 70,000 additional accessions. Here you can see how it was inaugurated by the Ministry of Agriculture and our director. Here you can see Vanya and our team. These are some cryo tanks. This is a very special cryo tank, this one, because the nitrogen that evaporates gets liquefied again. So you have to fill it up only once per year. So it's very the newest technology. Please help me. Okay. Then, what, it was too fast. Then 2024, we had a CGIAR workshop at CIP in December that counted with the participation of 7 centers, not only the clonal crops, but also the World Vegetable Center, ICRISAT, and C4 participated because they have crops that are interesting for cryopreservation, recalcitrant seed crops or orthodox seeds with short-living orthodox seeds. And it was very nice, and we were very active for 1 week, and we also agreed on the objectives for 2025. Can you? Okay. Over the years 2022 to 24, we have started to give intensive capacity building to the countries of Latin America. All that is color, some kind of color, has participated in the workshop. But then we go further. We have given 2 weeks intensive training at CIP, and then started to sign agreements on depositing accessions at CIP. For us, it's very important to have a legal framework in place for all the actions that we do. And I think we have to continue to get this running. Really, let the countries, the NAS of Latin America engage with this, and then we think that's a model for the future. This was the original idea, that Alexander also mentioned, the global initiative. So here you have the 3 hubs. Then you have a management team and interacting with the NAS. And then you have other research institutes of the developed world that help us also on the research level for difficult crops. So this is the last slide, and you know probably this graph. This is the graph. This is from Copernicus, from Europe. The increase of temperature. So 2024, we have passed the 1.5 Celsius limit first time. But this graph is worse. This is from the NASA. That's more than one month ago it was published. It shows the increase of the sea level worldwide. And the estimation for 2024 was 30% higher than predicted by NASA. This means the models and the things, the models and the predictions do not work as they should, and probably the temperature will increase more, and the biodiversity will be under threat. So we are running out of time, also for the presentation. A big thank to our donors to over the last 10 years, GIZ, Crop Trust, and the CGIAR. Without their help and support, this would not have been possible what we have achieved. Thank you very much.
Thank you for the presentations in which you highlight the global ecosystem of the gene banks and how the German government is contributing towards conservation of these gene banks and the importance, but also highlighting how the cryopreservation, the importance and advantages compared to traditional methods that we've been using and already advancing in some of the major crops that we use in the food systems. So we move on to the next speaker, unlocking the diversity of gene banks collections through digital tools and artificial intelligence. Dr. Bettina Heider and Lina Jasin are going to make this presentation.
Okay, good morning, everybody. I will use this microphone because the other one is really a bit noisy. Unfortunately, I can't move around, but I think this is working. So bear with me, being sitting in front of you, and my notes don't work either well. Yeah, I'm speaking here on behalf of 2 more speakers. Okay, yeah, Peter Wenzel, the head of GenBank at CIAT and the Alliance, and Lina Yassin, the product director of digital and data at the System Office. They will be available in the Q&A session for discussion, and will give their interventions after this talk. So I'm working at SIP GeneBank, and I'm responsible for user engagement in both at the SIP GeneBank, but also at the area of work too. So why is modern technology such as AI and other tools so important for gene banks? Well, at the CGIAR overall, we conserve more than 700,000 accessions of crop and crop-wide relative diversity. This is a huge amount of genetic diversity, but it is also fairly underutilized. We could do more, and we want our gene banks to be used more and better and more intensively. So what is the bottleneck? Why do we have this issue? One of the main issues is that we have a lack or limited availability of trait data. Trait data I'm referring to data such as resistance or tolerance or nutritional information. The gene banks do have their collections well characterized morphologically, and they also count with passport data, but trait data is really a limiting factor that hinders the identification of germplasm and makes it very difficult for the user who has an idea and needs an accession that has certain resistant traits, for example, to find it in a big gene bank collection. This is the literal search for the needle in the haystack. The other hampering factor is that the gene banks don't have a common joint data and germplasm management system established right away. And next, please. Yes. And it's not only that the multitude of different systems that are being used is confusing. Some of them are really not very user-friendly, so that users end up being frustrated. And in fact, most of the requests overall across all seed banks or gene banks, 54% of our requests come in by emails still. And for 5 of the gene banks, it's even more than 80% of the requests that come in by emails. This is a very long, cumbersome process because those requests, they don't come in very precise. There are very general questions and lack often contextual information that gene banks need to select the right germplasm that matches the need of the user. So when those emails come in, and they come all over, at least at SIP, they go to the director's office, they go to the visitor's office, they go to the gene bank, they come to the breeders. So the first step is to find the right person to send that email to, and then communication exchange starts that can take weeks, and on average it's more than 3 months that the whole process takes until really it is finalized and the distribution can happen. During that process, of course, the user or the gene bank can become confused, frustrated, and those requests are frequently also abandoned or not really finalized. So we want to improve this. And the solutions here, you can see on the slides there are already a lot of activities happening across the CG that address those challenges that I have just mentioned. We are working on implementing a common gene bank data and germplasm management system, the Green Global Community Edition. That's supposed to be common and solves this multitude and fragmented system of data portals that the CG has. There's also GIGWA, for example, that's a database that stores genomic and genetic data and can analyze it. Other centers like ICARDA, they work on a more user-friendly distribution portal. There are initiatives that use artificial intelligence to mine data or to use other modern tools such as DGS to mine the data of their collections and get more information that users can access and use to make that selection based on their needs for germplasm distribution. Next one, please. One of these examples, and this is a slide provided by Peter from CGIAR is the digital sequence information. This is a technology that allows gene banks to combine genetic information with passport data. And based on this, it is possible to find genetic variants that have the traits. No, let me put it differently. When you combine digital sequence information and passport data, you have information about the climate at the site of origin of that accession where it was collected. And that allows you to find the genetic variants that indicate you associations with certain traits. So for example, the cassava collection was analyzed using 97 environmental variables from the World Claim database. And it was found that there are alleles that are associated with accessions that come from very hot or dry areas. And this information points to certain tolerance levels. For example, on the left, you can see that there's an allele that points to accessions that have heat tolerance, and on the right, drought tolerance. So this allows gene banks to use modern technology to leverage on the information that is stored in their collections. And even though we don't have the trait data evaluated in the field, we can actually make predictions on the best match for the user's needs. Next one, please. Another example is from IRI, which is a very fascinating story on AI-driven phenotyping. IRI has more than 130 rice accessions conserved at IRI, and again, the question is how to identify the right one. The traditional approach of phenotyping is to go to the fields, have a multiple site, a very time-consuming, labor-intensive, and very expensive scientific trial in which you can only analyze limited traits and a limited number of accessions. So IRI took another approach. They trained an AI tool to recognize rice varieties using images of their seeds. And this enabled bulk planting of seeds that then can be traced back to the successful varieties. The impact of this is huge. IRI could actually phenotype half of their collection for drought, flooding, and salinity. So this is 3 different traits in a very short period. Actually, in 2024, it was 60,000. This is 3 times more than in the previously 52 years combined. So these tools are very powerful, and they can be real game changers in the way that the accession information and the trait information of our collections can be leveraged. Next slide, please. Yeah, but what if we could combine all these different new technologies and tools in just one system, one that unites a user interface guiding the users, collecting the contextual information that the gene bank needs, and then combine this with analytical tools to then eventually reach the matching of the germplasm that responds to the needs of the users, and also guide the distribution process for the user. It's an idea of a one-stop shop that can do it all, that allows us to generate information, and not just to retrieve it, to analyze it and provide the information and the data, and finally also the accessions that are requested by the user in a very fast and progressive way. So the hope is that just by establishing a chatbot interface that helps to retrieve the contextual information for the gene banks to be able to know what the user really needs and wants, and to help the user to get the information that he or she needs. We expect that this is reducing the interaction from 3 months to a couple of minutes. So that's a huge gain of efficiency. And also the process of selecting the germplasm is largely biased because it depends very much on the expertise of the curator or the person who makes the selection, and people usually return to what is known, what has a lot of data, and that makes the pool of the accessions that are usually recommended and distributed limited and doesn't take advantage of the entirety and the potential of the whole collection. Yeah. So at CIP, we're headed just towards this direction, and we have started to work on an AI-supported querying and distribution platform that we call Tubers2Go. It is an AI-assisted knowledge gateway, which is separated in 3 different project phases. Phase 1 has just been passed the proof of concept. It's a prototype of an intelligent request assistant that is exactly this chatbot interface helping to get the information that's needed. The second phase is an intelligent search using internal CIP data, analyzing and mining it to find the best germplasm match. And the last and third phase is an intelligent search that is also externally facing, using the data not only that we have, but also that's out in the net that can also model and analyze to help users get really what they are looking for. Next slide. Yeah, this is the prototype. We are presently working on interacting with the data transformation accelerator to establish and develop the phase 2 and 3. The beauty of this project is it can be scalable to other gene banks if there's interest. Yeah, and with this I conclude. I'm pretty much aware it's just the discussion and me standing between you and the lunch. And I hand over to Lina, who wants to share some thoughts.
I don't know if this works. Yeah. Thanks a lot, Bettina. I mean, the slides they speak for themselves. So I just wanted to reintroduce myself. My name is Lina. I'm a product director at the system organization, and I visited CIP when we were thinking about the Tubers2Go. And it was amazing because when we realized that actually it takes, I don't know if you heard the numbers, it takes around like 3 months of somebody actually contacting the gene bank to ask for the succession. 3 months, but why those 3 months? Because it takes like over 145 email threads to back and forth in order to understand which is the accession that actually this not because the people don't know, but actually even the breeder or the scientist or whoever is asking from the gene bank, they themselves do not actually know what they really need to be asking for. That's where actually product development gets into the picture. That's where we understand what do the users of this tool need in order to actually empathize with them and then offer them the services so that we're capable of actually shortening the cycle time, the 145 emails and 3 months into a product, which is user interfacing and can offer. But how do we do that? By actually making sure that we're really having all the data. So in the integration, so our vision in those 3 steps that Bettina mentioned is this integration of the data. So it's not about like chatting with this chatbot, because tomorrow we're going to be able to do that even in our chat GPT or Copilot. But it's actually doing this match and search, because as Bettina alluded that, today this knowledge is just by a set of people, but actually this knowledge is there. How do we make sure that AI can really grab into that, package it, mine it, so that the query is really very accessible? And the way that we're doing that is iteratively. So first of all, we start by actually serving this first user who's asking for that match. Second is like the gene bank saying internally, oh yeah, which is the best? Not only this one person that knows or the 5 people that knows. And then the version 3 is opening it out to knowing that we have a lot of database that are scattered, from the Genesis to Green Global to others, to own centers, to maybe other gene banks. I just saw the number, 280 gene banks right there. So how do we make sure that, first of all, we have the data, and we don't have to actually own this data because it could be in a federated model. So I just came from the Digital Transformation Accelerator session with that we were moderating. And one of the questions there was like, how will the accelerator, the Digital Transformation Accelerator, help the gene banks actually prioritize which germplasm should really we start first? So here was the idea of like, we're starting with SIP because it was a very attractive use case. But obviously the idea is that how do we make sure that the data is there and we're able to curate, we're able to build different levels of data, the multi models of like training an LLM, the large language model, in order to query both image data, genotyping data, sequencing data, all sets of data, so that we're actually doing it to serve the users that want this in the most knowledgeable way. But always the challenge is how do we do it sequentially and not start all at once, yeah? So that's why starting now with the tubers to go, by saying phase one is the chatbot, moving from a proof of concept that we showed that how it works to actually building the first capability, but very quickly also moving to the search and match capabilities, and then to the other gene banks for one crop. And then how do we scale it to what's the next crop? And then how do we make actually this database accessible? So that's, I mean, it's clear what we have to do. Now is that how do we put the order and how do we get the access to the data? And I think, you know, from the accelerator downstairs, we were talking about the FAIR, so finding the data, accessing the data, but the interoperability of the data, that's actually would be the challenge. And that's where AI and technology can help us a lot. Thanks a lot.
Okay, I think we have, thank you for your presentation, a very interesting presentation, which shows the modern technologies and applications of artificial intelligence in managing these gene banks, but also responding what the demands are for the different traits that we're looking for. We are over time, but I will recommend that we stay another 10, 15 minutes because it's a very interesting theme to have your feedback and your discussions. And if there are some questions, we're ready to take the questions from you also. Yes?
Thank you very much. So I'm Marian Queen from the CGIAR Ghana. So my question is on the cryopreservation. Very interesting, the advancements you are making. It's when you run in a cryopreservation system, the regrowth is critically an issue, especially for the tropical crops. Even you may lose viability even before sub-zero cooling. So what has been the extent of success and what is the way forward? Because what your presentation sounded very promising. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Yeah, I think two critical points are that you really have to establish strict criteria and have a quality management system in place for your cryobank. If the regrowth rate nor is adequate, not is high enough, then yeah, you have to improve your protocol. No, one example. For the potato, for example, our regeneration rate is 70%. This means in one of these small vials, you have 10 potential plants. And of these 10 plants, you will recover 7. The other 9 vials, when you conserve 10 vials, the other 9 vials just you maintain in a tank, as you will not take out everything. No, when you have to regenerate the material. But yeah, as you're absolutely right, regeneration has to be assessed strictly. You need complete in vitro plants, rooted plants that can then be transplanted to the greenhouse. So it's, yeah.
Thank you. We have one question online, Rajanish Paliwal. The question is, who will verify the AI selection decision? If it will go direct to request person or who cannot decide how to verify it?
I don't want to be taking that answer. No, but I think that it has to come to a prioritization criteria, right? And I think that the way that the portfolio now at the CG is that, you know, as a gene bank accelerator, as Breeding for Tomorrow program, and we as a digital transformation accelerator, that's where we need to establish how will the requests be and who's really capable of doing that prioritization. But at least, you know, that's why a very success story and showing what works for one gene bank or for one for one gene bank, and how do you scale it later. So the answer is that it has to be really a partnership, a strategic partnership with working with the three science programs and accelerators. Maybe you want to add something?
Yeah, I think it's also leading a little bit to can we trust AI? That's what I understand from that question. So yeah, it's a very valuable question, and it's quite important. I think it will depend on the training phase to see how we can establish a backward and verification loop. There's probably the curator or experts still having to look at it if the information is trustworthy. But it's a very good question, yeah.
Yeah, but maybe I can actually give already a validated answer to that part of the question. So now we are working with on one product as part of the accelerator, the Agri-LLM, which is training the first Falcon model with the UAE for agricultural data. But it is really done in order to avoid the hallucination of the large language model by actually having really a real Q&A questions by humans and then added clusters, and then on top of that then comes the Gen AI and so on. So there is a really validated process. How do you go from hallucinated data that is really validated, and that's for the Agri-LLM, for example, which we're doing in the UAE now. That's where the centers are really contributing the first 1,000 sets of real human-driven question and answers.
Thank you. We have another question online, and then we'll take yours. When can national gene banks get access to AI tools? Will they be? And this is from Theo van Hintum.
Thank you, Theo, for the question. You always challenge us, and that's good. So yeah, the goal here is to really work on phases to assure that we are doing it right. So we are calling it tubers to go, but we are already starting to engage with Africa rice, so we can start training that to other types of crops. But here we also need to think bigger, and that's where I believe the Crop Trust comes as a strong partner. We have Genesis, where multiple gene banks have their data there. And the idea is not that we have this tool being duplicated and every gene bank having it inside, but that we are able to look towards the data that is available globally. So once we get to the point where we have this data, this tool looking into the data that is available in global databases, if the person is looking for a potato, and the tool can go into Genesis and these international databases and look into that data and find the best accessions, they might find the best material of in a potato accession in another gene bank, not necessarily at SIP. So they can request this material from other gene banks if this material is available in Genesis. We know that not everything that is in Genesis is available for distribution. We know that the gene banks face different challenges, but it is a good way to show that there are good things across the gene banks, and this might trigger more support to these gene banks from our different funders, so we can make more and more materials available, not only the ones that are at the CGIAR. So that's the way we see to make this a tool that can be used by the global system together. I hope I could answer your question.
Thank you. You have a question?
Yeah, just linking the two last speakers together. I don't know if I picked up if we are using AI in cryopreservation, because it's really a big thing in organ cryobanking. Yeah.
No, we don't use AI. Yes, you're absolutely right. So cryopreservation is used for conservation in human science and animal science widely. So I think we are also from this point of view on the right side.
Do we have more questions, more comments? Oh, sorry. No.
Yes, I have a quick question. So fantastic, the tool. I mean, it's really nice to see it. And I was wondering, you mentioned integrating also the sequence data or sequence information into the kind of search model. I was wondering how advanced is that at this point to make the integration, and what do you think are the most prominent challenges that have to be overcome for making it a reality that one would also, use potentially the sequence data. You mentioned interoperability. Perhaps that's still an issue for that as well.
Yeah. So if that is going to be the big, large-scale project, we have to start very simple with data harmonization across all centers with what is just there. And this is going to be a big challenge already. For the construction of the whole modeling and AI tool, we will working together with AWS, with builders there to establish it. It's not been developed yet. And I think one of the biggest challenges there is going to be how we deal the legal part with the sequence information. Is it possible to use it? Do we have restrictions, or can we use it to the full potential? So that's one of the major issues. That's not even a technical one. Yeah.
Thank you.
We will.
Thank you very much. So comments and maybe questions and regarding what Bettina said on the frequency of seed requests, mostly through email than other system. If I can maybe share my experience in West and Central Africa, yes, still the seed requests are based on affinity. If I know someone or someone know and guide him to me, this and that. So there is a gap there that really we need to fill. Also, when it's come to, and you see it when you attend some national or regional agriculture fair, and you bring some small kids of different actions or participants or farmers, and many users are really surprised. I do have this action, because they don't know. We don't have. And when you have meeting with those in national system, the issue why they don't go to the Genesis and this is also connectivity of internet, which is really a very big issue in many places. In the capital sometime, but if it goes to the inside country, it's a very, so somehow my idea is maybe if we see from the CGIAR Genebanks perspective, how maybe we can be extending this community of practice, not only by those who are linked to the Genebank, but maybe having some modules in some universities where breeders are trained, like Waki in Ghana, which is training the young breeders now in West and Central Africa for all many countries. Maybe having someone giving some modules on this, maybe it can expand, and the use of Genesis and other tools can be really more practical and more useful for anyone. Thank you very much.
Yeah, just to comment on this, during the pilot phase, we did have breeders present and be part of the team, because at a certain point you cannot separate a germplasm request if it's someone wants a land race or a commercial variety. So it is going to be linked to breeding in any case, yes, and hopefully also being integrated into their management platforms. What is it called that they are building right now? Yeah. Yeah, no, they have their big data management system. That's exactly that one. Yeah. So we had first conversations with the builders of this to see how can these two systems be interoperable and communicate to each other, or be integrated in one into the other. So yes, I fully agree with you.
Thank you very much. If we don't have all the comments or questions, okay. The last question.
I have a quick one. Actually, it's linked with what the gentleman has said. First of all, I'm Carlos Malita. I work for Technologies for African Agriculture Transformation. What I see, actually looking at what the gentleman there said, what happens actually is that yes, there's a kind of affinity or ease contact between CG breeders and national system breeders. But I worked in Mozambique managing a seed program. What we really fostered is that those contacts should be institutionalized. We have to really work with the institutions because people will move. If you work with a breeder and then the breeder is out of the system, so there's a huge gap again because the national system, they don't have very well placed programs to build in, breeders and the system, etc. That is also a gap that is between the national system. So we as CG centers, we really have to get into contact with the institutions. This has to be a must. We know that it's easy. You've studied with a breeder, they've been your colleague at university, you've worked with them, but cut that one and engage the institution. Build the institution so that there's continuity in terms of getting, resources into the institution so that that is fledged. Because if we tend to do that, we're kind of creating kind of elites. The breeders are tending to be elites in the institution. So they have direct contact with the CGs, and then but that's the experience that we have, and we try to do that in Mozambique. It's not fully operational, but at least you have a system that is working. So that's my my advice and contribution on that. Thanks.
Well, thank you. We are coming to closing of this session. We are over time already. What has been very interesting, the discussion around a very important theme on gene banks. I would like to thank all the speakers for the excellent presentation and information you have shared today, and to the audience for your questions and insights, which are key and which will be addressed by the team that's working on the gene bank. The CGIAR chief scientist and the executive managing director called on us to be ambitious at the launch on Tuesday, and we have made good progress today in the discussions that we've seen in the presentations, but also with the group. But we have only had time to cover a small part of the work going on the CGIAR gene banks. So we can do this to be a start of a deeper conversation and effort. So if you would like to follow up, please come and introduce yourself to a member of the team and add your contact details via the Menti survey. And if you haven't already done so, please pay a visit to the Gene Bank's booth near the main entrance to the building. You can interact with the Gene Bank managers, try to fund quiz, and even do a virtual reality tour of the Salvaban Global Seed Vault. I take the opportunity to thank the managers, Dr. Vanina Acevedo and team, for an excellent job they're doing for maintaining the seed banks, which is very critical for the seed and the food systems that we are in discussion. So have and enjoy your lunch, and thank you very much.